This is Talk TV.
Welcome back. You're watching the Independent Republic of Mike Graham. The first deportation flight to Rwanda has been booked, according to Number 10, with the controversial bill now law after receiving royal assent. The first group of people to be deported have also been identified, with the Prime Minister promising earlier this week the first flight would take off in 10 to 12 weeks. It comes as a new report by the Refugee Council forecasts more than 115,000 asylum seekers will be left in permanent limbo, costing taxpayers £17 million a day. Unbelievable. Joining me now is Henry Bolton, former UKIP leader, and Andrew Eborn, broadcaster and barrister. There he is. Welcome to both of you. Thank you very much for joining us. Now, I mean, I never thought I'd actually read those words or say those words, that the law has now been passed.
Yes,
we now have a law that actually does mean that we can send people to Rwanda. One, I don't understand why it's going to take 10 to 12 weeks. Two, if they've booked a flight, who have they booked it with?
Yes.
And will that end up taking off? Three, these people who are going to be in limbo, hundreds of thousands of them probably by the end of the next couple of years. What are we going to do with them?
Well, Ryanair has offered to fly these people, apparently. So I understand. But
Will they charge them for luggage?
Yes.
An extra 20 quid.
They'll be able to choose their seat for an extra 20 quid or something. Yeah. The Refugee Council are absolutely right, but it's not actually the Rwanda bill that is causing this problem.
Right.
What it is, it's the Immigration Act, Illegal Immigration Migration Act from last year.
Right.
Because that actually said, and I think a lot of people would agree with this, and it didn't get that much coverage, that if you enter this country bypassing immigration controls, and if you have you have not come directly from the country from which you are seeking protection, so you've come through a safe, for example, European Union country, and you don't have the leave to remain here, then you either get sent back to, or your asylum claim is not valid.
Right.
So if you meet those conditions, your asylum claim, you're not entitled to make an asylum claim under the Immigration Act. Now, what that does is when we've still got all the boats coming, because we've not stopped the boats, it means that we've got people coming into this country who, ever since that act passed in July last year, their claim for asylum, or 91% of them, is not valid. Right. So it won't be accepted. Right. So they're just here in limbo.
But they can't be deported.
Well, they can be deported back to their own country, but if on a sort of dangerous list, for example, Afghanistan, we can't send them there. So that is why Rwanda. That's why we've got the Rwanda bill. Right. Now, none of this actually deters the boats. Right. Because we're still not doing anything about the boats.
But also, we can't send that many people to Rwanda because they can only take a few hundred.
Exactly. Now, that is why I suspect we've heard rumours that the government has been in talks with the Ivory Coast, Botswana,
Costa Rica,
Armenia.
But
it's ridiculous, isn't it?
It's bonkers. They're addressing, as I've always said, Mike, they are we've got to deal with the people who are already here. That's, of course, a case. And this maybe has part of a role to play in that. But what the focus should be on is stopping more and more people coming here. Yeah. And that is the piece that I just don't see being put on the board.
No. But surely, Andrew, if they start getting rid of some of these people who are in limbo and sending them somewhere, that might be a deterrent.
Well, it depends. And the real key, and Henry and I were discussing this earlier, is that the real question is, do the people know this is what's going to happen to them? Because the whole idea, as we always say, is the abhorrent people trafficking that we've got to target. Yeah. But we've got to get the message to people, say, look, if you try to come here, it's not all paved with gold. You're going to be sent away. This is the process that's going to happen. And we've had, 6,667 people crossing so far this year.
Yeah, but that's a bit of a drop in the ocean.
It's nothing compared to
the numbers who are here in limbo.
And it's totally limbo. And this doesn't deal with that.
They're still coming. Even if you send some to Rwanda, there are still more coming. And one of the things, Andrew says, we were talking about this earlier, and one of the things here is most members of the British public don't have a clue what's going on. Right. How can we expect the migrants or the asylum seekers or the economic migrants, whatever you want to call them, how can they... It's only a deterrent if they know that there's going to be a problem in their journey.
Well, presumably most of them know, for example, because they see it either on TikTok or they get messages from people who have got here. They come to Britain, you'll be fine, you'll be looked after.
Well, that's the message that they're still getting. Right. They're not getting the message that you are not going to be allowed to stay here. Right. And even if they do, then they're getting the message, well, actually, the government's saying that, but they're only going to be able to send this tiny proportion to Rwanda, so you're going to stay in the UK
And it's
anyway.
the point we made beforehand. I mentioned this movement called Io Capitano, which gives you a different view, because it's actually the people who've been told along the way, this is paved with gold, this is the way you have to do. And they talk about the torture and the murders and that sort of stuff. What we need to do is get that message through the ranks, and that this is going to happen, and it's not paved with gold. This is what's going to happen to you.
But the bottom line as well,
deterrent.
and I meant to ask you this when you were on last time, Henry, the problem is no longer just a pan-European one, it's a global one.
Oh, absolutely.
You've now got people being moved from sub-Saharan Africa over to South America and Central America to go into the US via Tijuana, right? So that's all going on as well. So clearly people are moving around the world because they think, rightly or wrongly, that wherever they end up will be better than where they were.
Yeah, absolutely. And because organised crime is not being dealt with. Organised crime is marketing this. You know, they're putting out the equivalent of their glossy brochures, saying, you know, Costa del London or whatever, and making it all look very attractive. And once these people are in the grips of organised people smugglers, then it's very difficult for them to escape. Some of the cases that I dealt with some years ago when I was combating this problem in southern Europe was that they would have their passports taken off them. We had them throwing their passports away, but their passports, any documentation would be taken off them by the people smugglers, because they don't want this person to suddenly change their mind and say, actually, I want to go back.
Right. And a lot of those passports are forged along the way anyway, so different people. So what was interesting as well, though, were the stats on this sort of stuff, because they say, actually, the vast majority are Vietnamese, followed by Afghans, followed by Iranians, Syrians, and Iraqis. In that
But
order.
isn't that also slightly misleading? Because I looked at these figures a couple of years ago, and unfortunately what you'll probably find is that the largest number are of no fixed country,
you're
because
right.
people don't say where they're actually from.
So
what you're actually telling me is that the ones who are from Vietnam are the probably biggest group of people who identify where they're from.
I think you're right.
Which is not the same.
And we have a problem with our immigration sort of the processing of it, in that we don't have people sufficiently well trained to know whether somebody is saying, you know, I'm an Iraqi Kurd, or are they from Turkey?
Right.
Or it's very difficult unless you have
as they did with the Albanians.
Absolutely, that was a classic case of that. The Albanian population lives across 4 countries. They all speak the same language. They all identify as Albanian. But actually, where do you return them to? Which country did they actually come from?
And also those who came seeking asylum because of what was going on in Kosovo, suddenly everybody from Albanian sort of heritage came and pretended that they were Muslims under attack and under threat. And that's part of the problem.
But this is what I've said all along, Mike, is that there is no silver bullet. People say, how do you stop the boats? But all of this that we're discussing now is a very complex suite of challenges that we have to overcome. It requires a government approach that is integrated, comprehensive, and focused on what is it we're trying to achieve here. So it pulls it all together. You know, the fact of the matter is, and in the conversations I've had behind closed doors, Rishi Sunak has not wanted the Rwanda bill to be any tighter. Rishi Sunak has allowed the Foreign Office to pull or to hold the Home Office back. And we already know that the Home Office is in a mess in this regard. So there are huge challenges here. And without really strong leadership in number 10 Downing Street, leading the Cabinet, pulling them together on this issue, I think we are going to be talking about this for many years to come.
No, I'm sure. And one of the things that's going to happen next week, believe it or not, is the Civil Service Union in the Home Office is taking the government to court over the Rwanda bill. You're kind of going, well, that's the first problem, isn't it? That's the first sort of, hurdle to get over, which they probably won't get over. And then we know that anybody they do try and send, whether it's in 10 weeks or 12 weeks or 20 weeks, they will be stopped by lawyers.
It's crazy.
Like all the time that we're talking about this, and all the time the government is failing to be decisive on this, is time during which this country is having increasing pressure placed on its housing, its public utilities, its economy, its society,
hospitals, doctors,
and indeed our entire identity and culture, I would suggest.
And you're not going to get the public behind. When you see the stats, £17 million a day, when we have a cost of living crisis, it's only going to backfire on that. But you say about being decisive, I think they're still missing the point, which we all agree on. It's about communication to the people traffickers and those who want to make the journey, the perilous journey sometimes, that this is what's going to happen to you, and therefore you've got to stop.
It's a message of risk to the organised criminals. It's a message of deterrence, or sort of kill the motivation of migrants. And it's a message to the British people that we are actually doing something real and solid about.
And you can warn them.
None of that messaging is coming.
And you can warn them there may be a Labour government when they arrive.
Well, that's the other problem, isn't it? You know, because they're not going to have any money. They're spending it all on privatising or taking back the trains.
Well,
from
the Labour
privatisers.
government's just going to... Oh,
Never mind,
we'll
it's
be
going to be a
talking about
nightmare. You're watching the Independent Republic of Mike Graham. Coming up, Rachel Reeves, speaking of Labour, has claimed that Labour to be pro-business, much more so than the Tories, even more than Tony Blair. But will her claims actually stack up? We'll talk about that coming next.
Hey, very good morning to you.
Thanks for joining us.
You're with Talk TV, on radio, online.
And we're on your smart speaking.
Now, you ain't going to have an Eve it, me old Chinas, but a new report is calling for a new definition of cockney.
All right, Jeremy, me old China.
All
Rosie,
right, sir.
oi, oi, treacle.
When J.K. Rowling says, let's just be honest, that's all she's saying, let's just be honest. When a man goes out and kills, we should talk about them as what they are, a biological man. Trans woman is not a woman, trans woman is a man.
Lee would have to go much further than his statement. I mean, he did say that he spoke clumsily and he understood the Prime Minister's position, but I think he'd need to say that he'd got it wrong.
Then I had a phone call this morning from Plymouth City Council, a lovely woman called Anna. And yeah, I've just received an email just saying that, yeah, I'm going to be getting a badge.
Quite right too.
It's that time again to get the violins out. That's right. Prince Harry has lost his bid for UK security after moaning he'd been singled out.
You might as well be discussing an invasion of Daleks for all I really get this. but I am now on social media, having been dragged off my £8 Nokia, reluctantly kicking and screaming. I'm a huge hit on Instagram, as you probably know.
What are you doing? I was just about to do it.
Ooh! It's carry on. What just happened?
Whoa, listen.
There was a suggestion by some that maybe it would be nice to put a statue of the Queen on the fourth plinth. Mr. Khan apparently wasn't too keen on that.
I'm sorry. I know it's coming and I can't stop laughing.
So he suggested alternatives. There's a sweet potato.
That's quite a small statue then. Wasn't there also a prostitute?
A trans sex worker.
You don't really need one of those in Trafalgar Square. You just got to walk up to Soho. It's only about 40 minutes.
Why do you know this?
Because I know everything.
Was he just unlucky getting that question with an ice cream, or is it a sign of something more?
Seemed like he was on a late-night show to attract a young demographic, and they put him in an ice cream store.
I read the statement this morning from the family. And if any police officer reads that statement, if you don't cry for what you read from what the family is saying, it's heartbreaking, then you shouldn't be a police officer.
The UK, I'd say, has lots of racism within it. I don't necessarily think it's a racist country, but it permeates our institutions.
But for her to say, come out and vote, and by the way, when I was 22 years old and I had an affair with a married man that I knew was married, the feminists failed me. I'm sorry.
I think the feminists did fail her. It was another era.
She was 22. We're supposed to have moved on from that. Don't hark back on something you did that was wrong.
Talk TV. It's the only place where you get the truth. Welcome back to the Independent Republic of Mike Graham right here on Talk TV. Now it's time for Taking the Mic. Well, I think we can firmly say that we have now heard it all. One of the most inoffensive comedy shows of all time has been hit with a series of trigger warnings because the woke warriors at ITV think it might upset a few viewers. Terry and June, an innocuous primetime family show which ran in the 70s and 80s with that terrible music, has been slapped with advisory guidance for people who haven't seen it before due to what ITV calls discriminatory language of the period. I'll try that again. Discriminatory language of the period. Terry Scott and June Whitfield play a middle-aged, middle-class, married suburban couple who live in Purley in Surrey. He works for Play Safe Fire Extinguishers and she spends most of the show putting up with his childlike tantrums, big ideas which always fail, and schemes that always end in disaster. He's a hapless individual, but he's basically harmless, as is the show. But of course, we can't have old-fashioned language when the reruns are shown on BritBox, which is a joint venture between BBC Studios and ITV. Fans of the retro television golden age have hit out on social media, calling the warnings laughable. One said, "It must be the episode where the vicar's trousers fell down when he called round to collect things for the church fete." Cue a sharp intake of breath from the new audience. In one episode, Terry responded to someone singing with the immortal line, "Last time I heard screeching like that was when I accidentally vacuumed the cat." Apparently, ITV were worried this would offend animal lovers. In another scene, Terry's boss is in a Native American fancy dress costume, and of course we can't be having any of that cultural appropriation, can we? And in yet another howler, Terry has some controversial views about Zimbabwe. Worse still, there's an episode where Terry's at a work conference and he accidentally puts on his wife's perfume by mistake. Apparently his boss hates gay people and Terry's terrified about being thought of as gay. Truly shocking stuff. ITV say this: "We regularly re-examine historical programming in order to review, relabel, provide context and ensure the right guidance is in place." Heaven help us. Surely the point of watching this old stuff, which used to regularly pull in an audience of 15 million people a show, by the way, is to see it in all its glory and wonder at why things like that were even funny back in the day. It's a serious case of oversensitive ninnies in a TV being frightened of their own shadows. Terry Scott had a nervous breakdown around about the time that the show was axed in 1988. It was said to have been brought on by the real-life revelation that he had a string of mistresses during his marriage to former dancer Maggie Pollan. And at the time he said, "I know it would be better to give up the booze, fags and birds, but life would be so boring, wouldn't it?" Cue studio canned laughter and another trigger warning. Well, I don't know if any of you remember Terry and June. Andrew Eborn was here. Terry and June, can you believe they've got a trigger warning on it?
I know, that's incredible. It was glorious.
I know. Well, I mean, you know, whenever you look back at some of those old shows, I mean, even Fawlty Towers, remember they had to remove it from
the German episode.
From the BBC iPlayer. They removed the German episode. They finally put it back on, but with a warning.
Yes.
But the whole point, surely, of watching some of this old stuff is that you sort of slightly chuckle at how ludicrous the comedy was.
No,
some of the comedy was very funny, but a lot of it wasn't very funny at all.
Yeah, I mean, the secret of comedy is knowing where the line is and going beyond it.
Yeah.
And that's the whole idea. You have to cause offence. But Terry and June were glorious. June Whitfield, I used to go out with a girl who was her hairdresser once when I was about...
Did you?
When I was about in my teens.
Right.
Yeah, so glorious. I mean, she was lovely in real life.
Yeah.
And Terry was a laugh every minute.
Right. Well, indeed he was, and he was quite a busy boy by the
Very
sounds
busy.
of it as well. But anyway, if I become Chancellor, so the saying goes, the next Labour government is going to be the most pro-business government this country has ever seen. Those are not my words, by the way. That is Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves, who is also planning to raise £22 billion of private sector investment in green energy projects, as well as 7.3 billion quid worth of taxpayers' cash. Now, I'm not quite sure exactly where this money is going to come from. Andrew, we talked about the money that they're going to spend on trains earlier on. And clearly the Labour Party have forgotten all about how difficult it is to raise money for all of the various projects that they want to do. And as we were just saying, they're going to have to find, what, 17 billion a day to pay for the migrants.
Absolutely crazy. And it's a glorious phrase, but there is no money, magic money.
Yes.
I think what we have to do in any of these conversations is say, look, of course we want all these services, but they're going to cost this where the money's coming from. Just promising something is just reckless.
Yeah.
And so it needs to look at that sort of basis.
Well, exactly right. And Rachel Reeves has already been sort of pulled up in a couple of instances because she's put out all sorts of messages in the last couple of weeks, one of which I think was that we're going to rebuild so many houses, and we're going to build so many houses that we will be the party of house builders.
Yes, the Bob the Builders will be.
And we're going to build thousands and thousands and thousands of houses for people. And you know that that's going to come back to haunt her.
Yeah,
because one of the things that all governments don't do is build houses.
Yeah, well, unless
so
it's for the Deputy Prime Minister on the other side.
Well, that's different.
That might happen on that sort of basis.
Well, Angela Rayner defended herself, didn't she, this week in Prime Minister's Questions, and said that the Tories are obsessed with her. Well, of course they are, because it's the only thing they can nail on the Labour Party.
Yeah, glorious.
But at the moment, they have got this ridiculous kind of smorgasbord of here's where we're going to spend a load of money. And I thought they'd said only, a month ago, that they're not going to say or promise anything that cannot be properly costed. Well, they've already thrown it out the window, haven't they?
You're absolutely right, Mike. And people need to hold their feet to the fire on this one. And the British public are not stupid.
Right.
So all of these idle promises which are not properly costed are meaningless. And people should question everything.
Well, they should. But, I mean, the problem for, as well as it was for the Tories when they came in, as you say, when Liam Byrne left a note saying there wasn't any money, is there won't be any money either. No. But let's talk to former Labour Minister Dennis McShan. He joins me now because there's an awful lot of promises being made. Dennis, welcome to the Independent Republic, by the way. Nice to see you. There's an awful lot of promises being made, but I'm not quite sure how much money they're going to have.
Really? I'm checking. I can't find hardly any promises. You go out with the Labour Party, and a lot of guys there saying, well, where are the promises? Where is the beef? This is the most cautious, conservative offer from a Labour Party in my lifetime. And I first stood for Parliament in 1974. And I think what Rachel Reeves is saying, it's what you'd hear in Germany, in Sweden, in Canada, in Australia. It is the private sector that has to be involved. What she could do, what the government could do, is make things a lot easier. You mentioned housing. You said, well, how can that be done? How can they promise that? Harold Wilson, Harold Macmillan, Tory housing minister in 1951, built 300,000 houses a year, and it kept the Tories in power until 1964. He didn't run around saying, oh, where's the money going to come from? There is money out there. There's builders out there. What you have to do is sweep away a lot of the bureaucracy, planning bureaucracy, the NIMBYs, the people who don't want any. They're very happy they've got their house, but they damn well don't want their grandchildren or anybody else to have one. That is a political fight, and I think Rachel Reeves is probably up for it.
She may well be, but I'm still asking you where the money's coming from, because here's one of her own tweets, right, from the last day. If I become Chancellor, I will work hand in hand with business to grow our economy. You know, so far so nebulous. It is only by unlocking business investment that we can lift living standards and achieve our potential. I mean, it's all very simple, isn't it? It all sounds all right, but what does it mean?
It's a task for her and for business. Do business want to re-elect Liz Truss? Do business want to have a Tory government well before Liz Truss or Boris Johnson that just gave in to local NIMBYs and stopped nearly all successful development? Does business want to work with universities? Because there's plenty of money there in the cities, in savings accounts. I've got young children. They'd be quite happy to trade up a house. They're saving hard. My son is. And it's there if the offer comes in, and that can't happen if we operate as a way we've operated in the last 40 years. I tend to say last 20 years. It's just been a culture of not supporting business, culture simply of the only way you should make money is speculating. The city boys, the Silicon Valley boys, the hedge fund boys, are all friends of mine. I like them loads, but we need business in Halifax. We need business in Rotherham. We need to unleash that. I agree.
What we need to do, Dennis, is to make things again, don't we? We need to go back to manufacturing as opposed to having this ridiculous economy which is entirely furnished economically by the finance services industry. And that's all we really do. You know, we've already heard from Vauxhall today who are saying, you know, if you don't stop this ridiculous net zero nonsense, we're probably going to pull Vauxhall out of Britain because we don't want to make electric cars. We're going to be killed by the Chinese. You know, we're not making anything anymore.
I agree. I mean, our industry's down to 8%. That's Margaret Thatcher's heritage. I mean, that is.
Oh, that's too far away. Listen, I'm very happy to blame this government and the one before and the one before, but I'm not going to take you blaming Thatcher still after all this time. There are people listening to this who weren't even alive when she died.
Well, I'm sorry, I was alive and I saw what it did to the north. She did to the north of England. She unleashed the city. She did things like selling off council houses, but without letting the councils build a single
Angela
new
Rayner
one.
bought one of them.
And there is no social housing program in the world that works without a renewal of social housing, and she killed that.
Well, now we're giving half the social housing that we've got, though, to people who are coming into the country illegally, which is not helping either. But we've got to run. I'm going to get you back, Dennis. I've got to get you back on because we haven't got time. Thank you very much indeed. We could have a very good row about this, I'm sure. Andrew, thank you very much. Andrew Eborn will be back later as well. You're watching The Independent Republic of Mike Graham. She's at it again, and why a BBC newsreader is truly the gift that keeps on giving, as she once again amuses her viewers with an interesting on-air choice of behaviour. Weeks after a sweaty Emmanuel Macron was seen hitting a punch bag in an apparent show of virility, the French president turned his sporting attention to football this week, with wife Brigitte Macron applauding from the stands. Monsieur Macron donned his boots for a good cause, a charity match at the Stade Bernard de Giroux outside Paris to raise money for children's hospitals. Mr Macron has already shown he can handle the ball, scoring a penalty in a previous charity match in 2021, even though some critics claim the goalkeeper was a little bit obliging. This time he scored from the penalty spot once again, thanks to similarly poor goalkeeping. Let's take a look. I don't think anybody has seen a goalkeeper not move as slowly as... I mean, he just doesn't move at all. You know, I mean, presumably he's allowed Monsieur Macron to score that goal. It's absolutely pathetic, isn't it? I mean,
glorious.
I'm very much against politicians getting themselves involved in things they don't really know.
Do you remember Boris Johnson knocking over that kid?
Yes, I do. I do remember it.
Or Boris on the zip wire.
That was hilarious. And
Boris on the zip wire was good.
He's very good at staging.
But he was very good at that. The panel are back with me, of course. Sam Dowler is here, Reem Ibrahim as well, and Andrew Eborn, constantly here. You just hear it all the time. You know, you might as well just sit there all the time. You know, a bit like one of those guys on those American talk shows.
I do.
Refers to him
Still here.
every now and again.
Like part of the furniture.
But Macron is a strange character, isn't he?
Yes.
You know, because he has this older wife.
Yes.
You know,
See, my friends have this theory about his wife, that his wife is a man.
Right.
No.
And
It wasn't just
like,
it was terrible.
It's a right-wing theory,
Yes.
full of nonsense. That they also said that Michelle Obama was a... They don't say a trans woman, they say a man. And so, yes, a man. Like, how is that an actual insult?
It used to be his teacher. She used to be his teacher.
Yeah, she did, yeah.
And that sort of thing. And it's a very sweet romantic relationship
Isn't
now.
though?
Older woman,
Teacher and student.
younger man, that's fine.
People didn't complain about Carla Bruni and...
Sarkozy.
Yeah, Sarkozy.
Is it sweet?
There's an age
or
gap
is it
there.
Really weird and creepy.
Well, no,
Maybe mind your own business when it comes to somebody else's relationship.
Well, exactly.
He was a
Older
man.
I couldn't care less, to be
she
honest.
was a
It doesn't
man.
bother me. I
No,
mean,
it doesn't bother anybody.
I'm more concerned about his inability to take a penalty.
Hilarious.
You know, because, I mean, he obviously can't be a real man if he can't take a
No,
penalty.
of course not.
I mean, it's absolutely
Of course
shocking.
not.
But then, I mean, you remember
Maybe
David
he's the
Cameron?
woman.
David Cameron pretending to be an Aston Villa fan. And he came into Talk Sport, couldn't remember whether he was an Aston Villa
exactly,
fan
but that's
or a
okay.
West Ham fan, but they play in the same colours, so he was easily confused. Same as old Prince William.
I like that
Apparently-
one because it's pretty.
Yeah, Prince William claims to be an Aston Villa fan as well.
Yes.
Nobody's really very sure about that. But let's talk about some of the other stories knocking around. Captain Tom's shameless daughter, it says here, Hannah Ingram Moore, is apparently selling the family's mansion.
Yes.
Now, you might be disappointed to learn that it doesn't come with a spa, because of course they had to knock that down.
Does it come with a statue, though?
£2.25 million
Bargain.
they want for a mansion in Bedfordshire. Any bidders?
Well, Beds is near. It's
your neck of the woods,
It's
isn't
my
it?
neck of the woods actually, and I do kind of.
Maybe you should go and have a viewing.
I would go and have a
should
viewing
go and
just
have
for
a
the
viewing.
lols,
Yeah.
because I would say like is there a spa?
Yes.
I thought there was a... Rightmove said there was a spa a couple of weeks ago,
also
but now
it was
there
a
is
spa,
not one.
And there was a spa that was built for the community, let's not
Yeah.
forget.
Oh,
so, you know, you'd want to be able to...
Come on in.
Yeah.
It was like Lourdes. Like
Right.
anyone could come in
That's
and
right.
bathe in Captain Tom's ether.
Yes.
People seem to think there's a problem with being wealthy. It's like, no, we should be encouraging people to be wealthy. We should be proud.
There's nothing wrong
of
with being
wealthy.
wealthy.
People in this
I think there
country.
is something wrong, unfortunately, though, with using somebody like Captain Tom to raise a load of money and then give yourself some of it and say, oh, I thought that was my commission.
Bottom line is she wants to get out. She wants to get out of the house. It's got bad memories.
Yeah.
I mean, it was obviously I was going to say Uncle Tom there. It was Captain. It was
it his house or was it her house?
I think it was their family home,
Right.
and obviously he has, it's quite a glorious house actually. But
It looks lovely.
But
It does,
obviously,
stunning.
but obviously with everything that's happened, like the fact that obviously he traipses his way around to 30 million, but it's.
Does that add any value?
Yeah, but under her rule, it has become something of a
you have to put the
white
other-
elephant, I suppose.
It's a bit like the House of Usher, isn't it?
Yes.
They just want to sell up
The House of Pusher.
House
very good.
of
The glorious.
Pusher.
But he was the glorious hero, and he raised a lot of money and awareness. He was the oldest person to get to number one, which is wonderful. Sir Tom Moore, the last thing that happened to him wasn't
Until
so
he released
good.
your
But
single.
he raised money for a broken institution,
He
the
did.
NHS.
And
You know, we're
nobody
really
knows.
proud of it.
Yes.
Actually, nobody knows what happened to the money either, because
Well,
he gave it to the NHS.
Oh, just about anything. Anytime you give money to the
Apparently
NHS.
they passed it on to the NHS.
No, I know that.
And then it
I know that.
disappeared.
No, but I'm saying,
where did it go
but when
in the
once it got
NHS?
to the NHS, where did it go? That's what I'm
Oh,
saying.
but we wondered that, darling, about our taxpayer money that goes to the NHS,
Yes.
which is almost £200 billion a
Yeah.
year. Where's that all gone?
Not
Poor
much
Captain
last.
Moore put in all of that effort to help people. Where did the money go?
I know.
To pen
You
pushers.
should also.
Yeah, but it's like when you get you get a little bit of inheritance inheritance from a granny you didn't know.
Really?
It doesn't, no, but when one does...
I've never had any inheritance in my life.
I know your granny.
It goes straight into your bills. Do you know what I mean? You
Well,
don't think like, oh, I must buy this.
You have a very different experience than I do. Oh, where is my inheritance? I've not had that.
There's inheritance, because you could, if you wanted to look at this other story we've got, the Gustav Klimt painting, which resurfaced after 100 years. Now, believe it or not, there are cases where you find something like that in the attic.
Yes, it's
This
true.
painting's worth 26 million quid.
It's phenomenal.
Where was it found?
That would do more than pay for a few bills of yours.
It would. And you could buy Uncle Tom's house as well, and you still have change. I mean,
You could buy a
Uncle
nice
Tom.
property.
It's not Uncle Tom.
Captain Tom.
Captain Tom.
But you could put 26 mil, just give it to the NHS and you'll never see it again.
I know. The
I wonder-
NHS has an ability to swallow money. It's a
You might know-
bureaucratic black hole that just
it is.
swallows
Well, it's a bit like the government. I mean,
Well,
they just want more and more
it
money
is
off you,
government tone.
pay more tax. I don't know what the situation is if you sell a painting like that at an auction. Do you pay tax on it?
Well, the principle is it'd be capital gains tax and other bits and pieces.
Would it be?
It depends on that sort of property. So yes, absolutely. So if you got it for nothing, you had to pay tax on it.
Well,
And
that
it
would
depends
suck,
on the investing.
because you'd have to pay about
This
half
is why I
of it in
believe
tax.
taxation is theft, Mike.
Yes, I agree with you.
It is.
It is. Well, I would say no taxation without representation, as they used to say in
I
America.
think that
And
makes
we are
sense.
not properly represented in this country,
Yes.
because whenever they change the tax rules, they
Yes.
never ask us.
Well,
They never say, would you mind paying more council tax? They just
Yeah.
put it up.
Well, in your independent republic, in the last dying days of it, I mean,
I'm sorry.
You could,
Pardon,
What are you
Andrew.
talking about?
Have some respect.
It's dying. No, we're moving.
We're moving.
It's like saying you're moving house. It's like saying you're dead. What's wrong with you? You know.
So, but
God.
my point is,
But
you have the auction
that
here.
is what happened
You can have
to,
the
that is what
auction
happened to Captain Tom, however.
Tom,
He did die in his home, and
He
that's
did.
nice. But
Now-
Mike's not dying in this home.
No,
No,
absolutely.
exactly.
It's a
So
new
enough,
home.
enough.
Exactly. Stop that. But I'll tell you who is dying on his arse, and that is Humza Useless.
You have a video.
Who started his political career with so much promise.
Yes.
And when he came into power, unelected, of course, when Nicola Sturgeon decided that he didn't actually have anything left in the tank, he decided that he'd do away with their net zero targets, right? And then today, Patrick Harvey, the green monster of Holyrood, has said, right, well, we're not going to support you anymore. So he's now running a minority government.
Yeah.
I'm told by the end of this month, by the end of May, he might have to have an election.
Yes,
Well, if
that's
the
right.
vote of no confidence goes through,
Yeah.
then he'll be gone. What I find really interesting is it's effectively up in Scotland, you've got socialists saying you're more socialist than me, or
Yeah.
I'm not socialist enough, and it's basically multiple different socialists with
Yeah.
that are effectively the same, but just wearing different coloured ties and arguing with one another about who's more woke. Effectively,
I
when it
almost feel
comes
like
to
we
environmental
need a
policy.
general election. It's almost
That
it's
won't
almost,
help
what's that
Scotland.
going to
it's
say?
almost, it's almost like the last time we had a general election, there was a completely different political landscape in Scotland, Wales, everywhere in the UK. So it's time we ask the people what they want.
Well, the
So
good
I
thing
agree,
about
but what's that going to change? I mean, what difference is there between the two main parties? Or
the problem at the moment is
Trains.
You know, the problem at the moment is no matter where you are, whether it's Scotland, Wales, England, or even Northern Ireland, everybody's fed up with the government.
Yeah,
You know,
right.
over in Northern Ireland, they've got a government which actually wants to unite Ireland.
Yes.
So they want to end the subject of Northern Ireland altogether. Up in Scotland, the SNP don't want independence anymore. They're just literally clinging on. And they'll probably end up getting kicked out of office. The Tories have finished in England. And in Wales, they hate Labour.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a complete, absolute
Trust-
scrambled egg mess.
It's time for the independent Republic of Mike Graham.
Well, I mean,
Yes,
it
it's going to go on forever.
A benign dictatorship is the only thing that works.
Yeah.
Seriously.
I'd
Yes.
vote for you, Mike.
I know you would.
I know,
Thank you very
we
much
all vote
indeed.
for you. I'm very disappointed you haven't shown the video because I was really hoping we're going to have this story. It's the
Which
first
video?
time-
Humza user falling off the
We don't have it.
Well, the one where so we have that for Plank of the Week every single week. In fact, he was on it last week.
I know,
Plank of the
I
Week.
remember, I loved it.
But yeah, unfortunately, we haven't got that for you, but we can probably find it.
Oh, I'd like to have it. I think
before
we
the
should
end
go
of
out.
the show.
Before the end of the show.
But seriously, I mean, you know, there's a huge vacuum
Yes.
at the heart of every government
there is.
in the British Isles.
And also, I mean, just specifically with Scotland, since we're talking about that, minimum pricing, minimum alcohol pricing. The government have effectively, over in Scotland, implemented minimum pricing and then fudged the numbers to pretend that it's now working, that people are
Right.
drinking less. It's just actually not true.
No.
They're completely making this up.
They're not drinking less; they're just dying younger.
Well, exactly. And then what's really interesting about this, and again, I can go on about the nanny state and A, why is it the government's business how much we drink anyway?
Yeah.
But B, the fact of the matter is the government is just making this stuff up. And now you've got the tobacco and vape bill, which is just being passed through Parliament. And they are then effectively saying that, you know what, even though you become an adult at 18, you're not going to be allowed to make your own choices about your own body, which is absolutely bizarre. And then you've got put whole swathes of regulation on housing or how high our tax burden is. So tell me what is conservative about this.
Well, they're wasting time with the they think it's a vote winner, I suppose. What would have been more a vote winner would be to deal with assisted dying, for example, if they'd have talked about that, or about.
But those are kind of niche little things off to the side.
No, what's more niche?
Inheritance tax.
Inheritance tax, for example, as well. Another vote winner, except no, it's going to be cigarettes. I've never seen a 16-year-old smoke a cigarette.
This is a really good point.
For
Inheritance tax is really, really cheap. It doesn't cost the Treasury that much.
It only cost them $7 billion. And all the people who think they're not in the categories, if you have your home now, you can buy Uncle Tom's copy of it all. You can buy his one. That would be huge on that.
But it's because of fiscal drag.
It's crazy.
Due to inflation, this is fiscal drag. People are now being dragged into higher income tax brackets, and now the people that were once entirely exempt from inheritance tax are now having to pay it. So effectively, it's death tax, isn't it?
Isn't the issue more though that we're now separating the society that we live in, where there's people over here that pay tax and there's people over here who pay no tax, and that's the problem. And it's two groups of people.
And it's entirely unfair. Why are we paying for people to sit at home on their bottoms?
Exactly right. Exactly right. Just going back to Holyrood though for a minute, some people think this is a good thing for the SNP because they finally got rid of the Green Party, who was so sort of crazy and extremist about a whole number of different things, including, they wanted to completely just abandon the oil and gas.
And also,
they wanted to break down all the businesses. They didn't want anybody cutting cars.
And they're fundamentally anti-business. They would rather we all be living in shacks and not using up any energy at all. What I find really difficult about a lot of these...
That would be better for the environment, FYI.
It would be better for the environment, but what progress would humanity ever
make?
make?
If you want to live in a cave, you're welcome.
Go on. You volunteer.
Don't bother turning on the electricity. Just go and live in a cave.
Does it have a toilet?
But the really sad thing is that people are not voting in a positive way. It's always negative at the moment, isn't it? There are no true leaders, that's what they're saying.
Yes.
And that's what we need to unite.
It doesn't. I don't think it actually helps the fact that they're not elected.
Yes.
Rishi Sunak, not elected by the people. Humza useless, not elected.
Sunak was not only...
Eborn Gethin.
Well, exactly. But Sunak was not only not elected by the general public, but also rejected by his own party members.
He was doubly unelected. Even his own party said no, we'd rather have Liz Truss, and then that went tits up.
And everyone said,
all we did was
everyone said at the time, nobody can be worse than Liz Truss. He's actually been worse because he's actually lost more money
on it.
And there's been more of a run on investment in this country. There's been even less growth than there was in the short time that she was in.
And look, love her or hate her,
and he's a billionaire, so how honestly would he even know how we live?
Who would you respect as a leader?
I don't respect any leaders.
There you
I'm
go.
my own leader, thank you very much.
Yeah, agreed.
I'm not interested.
I respect the individual. I think people should have the freedom to do what they wish with
I
their
want the
own
government
life.
to run the country as if they were civil servants, as if they were, in fact, people.
That's why you and I
who were
disagree. I
charged.
don't want the government to run the country. I want them to stay out of it.
I don't want them to tell me what I should do in the bedroom, what I should do in the kitchen, what I should do in my car. I mean, I want to get the hell out of my life.
What do you get up to in your car?
And just run, they can do a lot of things in my car.
Same as he gets up to in the bedroom.
Yeah. It's a very fast car, so I can go very fast. The point is, I don't want them to take over my life. I want them to just manage the economy and make sure that people pay as little tax as possible, make sure that actually people can make businesses work, and give the freedom of financial security to people.
Power to the people.
Instead of giving people free money, which is ours, basically. I want them to do all
There's no such thing as a free
This is
land.
the thing, we were talking about the trains earlier, the country is not running correctly.
No.
On any level. It is. I know we talked about Broken Britain years ago. I remember with Tony Blair years. Oh, it's Broken Britain. Then it was rule Britannia, etc., etc. So these things, these things are cyclical. These things are cyclical. Of course they are. So so therefore, we were about to have a new government, which we know we are.
But the bad news is the governments are getting bigger with every year that passes, and the Labour Party won't be any yes. But let's talk about something else, because I like this story. Plans for a seafront development in Portsmouth are leaving nudists. It says here, shriveled with fear.
I know. That's glorious.
These are things that you don't ever want to encounter, right? One of the worst things you could ever do is stumble upon a nudist
when you go on holiday, and you go around a secret cove,
you
and
come
suddenly
through, suddenly it's a nudist beach.
It's a lovely story, because they're talking about people, the new development, they think they're going to be shocked by seeing all these wrinkled bodies. And...
No, so what I think is really lovely about this is that we end up appreciating people for who they are and actually really seeing real beauty.
What?
How
Have you not seen the picture?
Yes, I was going to say.
Have you looked at that?
Sorry, that when you go to a nudist beach,
It's not Sports Illustrated.
I
we're
think
talking about
there's
here.
beauty in everyone, Mike.
Of course you do, and that's a lovely thing to think. But unfortunately, it's not true.
It's not true. And people who go to nudist beaches tend not to be the people you want to go to nudist beaches. Would be.
I know. Can we get some nice
And also,
models in there?
who's playing like table tennis? What's that about? Why would you want to play table tennis in the nude?
Because these are people that have obviously they have enough self-confidence. They're
Yeah,
like,
it's
it's not about being naked. But of course, you're not going to see body beautifuls on
No.
there because they're not the sort of
But
people.
they're real people.
Because the body beautifuls are busy doing something else.
As Bernard Manning would always used to say, there was
Bernard Manning.
No, he used to say there was an
You're
old
actually
lady who had
quoting Bernard Manning.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one person had a stroke, the other.
It's another
didn't.
Uncle Tom
That was
reference.
Bernard Manning. Exactly.
I mean, for God's sake.
Goodness me, you're 2 foot away from being on that nudist beach, Andrew.
I'm 2 foot.
We can see your saggy balls from here, sir.
Yeah. I think that's enough about nudists. I've obviously sent them all insane. Now, coming up tomorrow night at 7 p.m, only here on Talk TV, it is, of course, Plank of the Week. Here's a snippet of what you can expect. I think we've got a little clip which is an example of the speed limit and how it should be done. Now, this is what... this is what the Welsh are doing.
Was that a lawnmower?
It was. I think it was a... It looked... have another look. I'm not sure it was a lawnmower or one of those disability scooters.
Yeah, mobility scooters.
Yeah, it might be a mobility scooter that's been souped up. It is. It is a mobility scooter. Here we go. Which also presumably doesn't have a registration plate, so they can't do him either. Can't be done because there's no registration plate on a mobility scooter. So,
but there's also no protection if you have an accident.
for
You
God's
come
sake.
flying off.
Yeah, well, that's fine. Some people like danger.
Yeah, let them have a bit of
people in
exhilarating
America
life.
who voted for freedom, they ride around on motorcycles. They used to in California without crash helmets because they want to.
Yes.
And if they want to, that's
with their
fine.
AK-47s.
Yeah, they can have that.
Yes,
as well.
let them be free.
Let them be free with guns and no helmets.
The world of work.
Well, hopefully they're not going to let him loose on Land of Hope and Glory.
Oh, that'd be brilliant.
in a rubber S&M suit.
Let them loose. And Sam, no matter what you think, Sam has a beautiful voice. And
I don't like it.
And people,
I don't like it.
but people who are fans before, and fair enough, they are pushing the boundaries now with their music and their look.
And they're multiple people.
Yeah, there's loads of them, yeah. He's got several personalities.
You can use they, them as a singular.
You can use they, them.
As we all
Absolutely.
do every single day,
that's right.
FYI. If you don't
Well,
know
you can if you're
if you don't
talking
know
about
somebody's
plural.
gender, and their gender is
and you're right. It's like the pronoun for chocolate, like her, she. You work on that sort of basis is always good. And the ninja.
Sort of joke,
No, it was. It was there.
I tend to use a singular. I tend to use a singular pronoun for a singular individual. But there we are. Let's talk about what's in the papers. Gigs to be a dad again
Hurrah!
at 50. This is his third child. First with Zara,
Yes.
who's his girlfriend. He's going to be a dad for the third time, age 50. Not particularly old to be a dad these days.
Not.
And his girlfriend's only 14 years younger than him, which is not very old.
And she's already a mother.
Yeah.
Well, Robert De Niro is 80 and
Yes.
Al Pacino's 84. And they're
See, I think
dads.
that's getting on a bit.
That's all right.
They're not even able to lift.
Charlie Chaplin was 90.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but look what happened to him. You know.
And he died. He died not
He
soon
died old
afterwards.
age.
Wasn't allowed to speak.
But I'm amazed, and honestly, if I could get it up when I was 90, fantastic.
Well, there's a thing called Viagra. You can buy that. Have you not heard of it?
I have heard of it.
Yeah.
You've certainly heard of it, haven't you?
Of course.
I'm not 90, so I don't need it.
You're a big fan.
Not yet. Max and Spencer.
Yes.
Front page, the page 3 of the Sun. New burger salad has more calories than a burger. Well,
I just know this is going to absolutely
It's a
set
burger
off.
salad.
Why would you want a burger?
What is it?
Why would you want a burger salad with burger sauce?
A
and
cheeseburger pasta salad.
People might want to eat that, but I just know this is going to set off all of the nanny status.
Well-
They're going to want this to be banned, or they're going to want it to be restricted, or they're going to want it to be in plain packaging. I just know that this particular story is going to absolutely set off all the nanny status. I'll tell you what: if you want a burger salad, you should be able to have a
But there
burger
are some
salad.
foods that I think. I mean, if you want to have a burger with salad, fine. But what a burger salad? It seems to me it seems ridiculous.
And a cheeseburger salad is bound to have more.
It's like putting chicken tikka on a pizza.
Yeah.
It's
not right, is it?
But what makes it a salad? Well, what's the definition of a salad? Because the whole idea, it sounds like this is pasta and it's got cheese.
I
And
don't think it's got any lettuce.
It's got no lettuce. I would have thought a salad has to have lettuce.
Not like Marks and Spencer's.
People at home will know
not like
what
Marks
the
and
definition of a
Spencer's
salad is.
LGBT sandwich, which was a BLT with avocado.
Oh, look at you with your avocado. I love a bit of avocado.
Avocado
Oh no, it's guacamole. Sorry, that's the G. The G was guacamole.
Avocado is probably the most woke vegetable.
It is. This is quite expensive as well, probably, because it's M&S, but they've got 33 grams of fat in it, 755 calories, which is more than an actual double cheeseburger. It is have a double cheeseburger with lettuce and a salad.
Good.
If you tell people, they have a choice, don't they?
It's burger sauce flavoured mayonnaise.
Well, it's called Viva.
Please.
Viva, which is a great name
burger sauce
for
is
a
mayonnaise
salad.
in itself.
Well, it is, isn't it? Just mix the tomato ketchup and the mayonnaise.
Yeah.
Feud over Taylor, Inside the Sun.
Yes, we love Taylor
pages
Swift.
23 and 24, I think.
So this is a 10-year feud that's been going
Kardashians
on.
versus Taylor Swift.
Yes, Tay-Tay will win.
Yeah.
Tay-Tay will win.
She will.
She will. She will win.
No,
200 million.
Yes,
200 million.
I watched something the other day.
streams in 24 hours.
You know the rapper Machine Gun Kelly.
Yes, we love Machine Gun.
So he was on a show, and they asked, and the presenter asked him to say 3 bad things about Taylor Swift, and he refused.
Did he?
Good for him.
Because he'll get attacked.
Because he was like, I don't want that beef.
Well, funnily enough, I was talking to Kinsey Schofield earlier, and Meghan Markle has got one of the Kardashian sort of satellite members of one of the Jenners holding up a tin of her jam. And I said, well, that's bad news because now she'll be the enemy.
Yeah, all the Swifties would come after Meghan Markle. That would be the downfall of the royal family. I'll tell you that. What's really interesting about this feud is it's been going on for about almost a decade now.
Right. And it dates back to when Kanye West was horrible.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, Kanye West effectively.
back in the day.
And this is
Such
actually,
an old
I think,
tale.
one of the most important moments in pop culture history is Kanye West on stage with Taylor Swift and completely shocking the world. I think I felt goosebumps. I felt there was an earthquake as this was happening.
Sarcastic?
No. Me being sarcastic? What? And it was really interesting. So, yeah, this entire feud kind of got off the back of that. Kim has been taking selfies with Taylor Swift's ex-best friend, posting it on Instagram. Now, very helpfully, The Sun has put out a lovely timeline that details every...
That's good for people like me who don't know
people that
the
have
full
absolutely
story.
no idea about what's going on.
People like
It's
you,
a
Mike,
very
with,
good
no,
timeline.
people like Mike with a life who wouldn't care about any of this.
I don't mind Taylor Swift's music.
But it's been cranked up so that people can sell magazines and sell papers. Like, I want to hear about the feud. I mean, like, nobody really cares.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Although she has written a song about it, hasn't she?
The whole album.
What's really interesting, though,
Reputation.
what's really interesting is her political influence, because now the younger generation, so back in 2018...
They all want to vote
when
for
she got
Trump
involved,
now, don't they?
But that's the thing. So what's happening now is Taylor Swift will have an influence, and the younger generation...
If she does choose to pick a candidate.
Yeah, well, she came out. There was a Trump. She was pictured on the carpet at the Grammys holding a Trump one thing, which was deep fake. It was a deep fake thing.
So she wasn't pictured.
So you just said something which is entirely untrue. Get off. You're out. You're finished. That's all from me tonight. You've been watching The Independent Republic of Mike Graham. Plank of the Week coming back at 7 o'clock tomorrow. See me next week on Monday from 6:30 in the morning. Breakfast. It's only on Talk TV. Thanks to all of you guys. You shut up for a while. See you later.